So they didn't discuss tapering, perhaps, at the Governing Council meeting.
It was obviously discussed offline.
Offline, perhaps, but not at the Governing Council meeting. They didn't even discuss an extension to QE.
Really? We all know they're going to extend, and I mean, that's very clear. We go around seeing, as you know, clients all over the place. And I was in Italy earlier this week, and I was in Spain last week. And in Europe in particular, I think a lot of clients were spooked by this sort of story of tapering. I think here in London, no one believed it, whereas around Europe, it was something which was impacting market sentiment. So I was being asked this question every single meeting. They're going to start tapering? No. So I think, you know, the confirmation that it's going to be extended out really is what we heard yesterday. I think would have reassured investors it would just carry on. And also remember that if they were going to be tapering, they'd be tapering just at the point when we in the UK trigger Article 50, which to us was a complete nonsense.
Right.
So,
and what was it for you that made you, that most convinced you that an extension is coming? Anything in particular about what he said, or just the data?
Just the data, and the fact that, you know, it's going to carry on at 80 billion a month, and the fact that, you know, it's quite clear that they're not going to simply stop. I mean, if the economy was to boom between now and December the 8th, then, yeah, they might think about sort of winding it down next year, but they can't.
And with our eyes on December the 8th, then, you think that that is the date where we get some changes in how the policy works? You think it'll go for longer, 6 months longer, and you think there'll be other changes to it? What else are you looking for?
Well, the modalities of the programme also have to change. I mean, they should have done this in July. I mean, the problem with the ECB is they're not really always ahead of the curve. In fact, they're always behind it. They should in July have changed the modalities to actually allow the central banks more latitude about where they buy, buying below the depot rate, but also increasing the 33% limit. I mean, here in the UK, the Bank of England can buy up to 70%, and that's where the ECB
of any issuance.
Go. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where they may eventually go. Now, the tapering scare did actually allow the Bundesbank more latitude because it led to higher bond yields in Germany, so that was actually slightly helpful for the Bundesbank. And they can get through to December the 8th, I'm sure. They can also buy more agencies to make up the difference. But at the end of the day, they're going to have to change the modalities and extend out QE, because basically when they publish their new star forecasts, they're going to publish numbers for 2019. And inflation isn't really getting back to target. In fact, it's stuck below 1% on a core basis.
So if it's not going to get back, they need to do something, would be your view. I've got a chart here. This is hashtag BTV4411. If you've got your Bloomberg, you can find this. Draghi's euro issue, because whilst life might be, you know, he might be pleased with what's happened to the euro overnight against the dollar, perhaps, dropping below 109, although it's just above that now at 109.02. Of course, against the pound, big trading partner for the euro bloc, things don't look quite so rosy.
No, I mean, obviously here in the UK, there's the issue of Brexit, which overhangs everything. But in terms of the euro, I think, you know, Draghi would be pleased in the sense that it's fallen. I mean, the thing about the eurozone is as big as the US, but it's as open almost as the UK, not quite, but it's a really open bloc. Over 25% of GDP is exported and imported in terms of goods and services. So, you know, the euro does really matter much more for the ECB than it really does in terms of the exchange rate for the US Fed, or in fact for the Bank of Japan, which are much more closed economies. So yeah, no, it's helpful.
Let's talk a little bit about Portugal, because we have an important review taking place today, don't we? The DBRS credit agency deciding whether they're going to remove the only non-junk rating on Portugal. Lots of people saying they don't expect that this will be removed, so no changes is generally seems to be the expectation. But it would be significant, as Mario Draghi pointed out yesterday, if we were to see this non-junk rating being removed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, he answered that question and made it clear that if there is a downgrade, then it would be an issue for Portugal. But at the same time, I think gave Portugal his blessing by basically saying they've done an awful lot in terms of, you know, fiscal reform and so forth. So in terms of, you know, where he's expecting the rating to go, I don't think he's expecting it to change at all. At the end of the day, though, if, you know, DBRS was to follow through and downgrade, I think the ECB would end up still buying the paper. Yeah, because I think, you know, they can't have a situation where Portugal starts selling off dramatically from here. We'll remember as well, we've got the Italian referendum, which I think is also very important, and, you know, for Draghi will be very important in terms of Italian reforms, and that's on December the 4th. And there's a very good chance that the Italians vote no to reform, which means that maybe Frankfurt and Brussels takes a much tougher line on the Italian banking sector.
Interesting. You say I pulled up the ECBB function on the Bloomberg, on which we can look at the implied buying of what the ECB is buying according to the capital key, and it suggests that they might be buying 17 billion euros for Portuguese debt. And you think that would continue then, if even if they lost the rating?
Well, I think they'd have to change. If you had a situation where what was happening in Portugal, you know, I mean, you know, we don't meet many investors investors who are heavily buying Portuguese paper at the moment. It's more of a, I would say, a punt, in nice terms.
Yeah.
And Spanish investors, for example, we meet, don't tend to hold Portuguese paper at the moment. There's a systemic problem here that if Portugal goes, then you've got an issue with potentially later down the line Spain and also particularly Italy, because if it's Italy, the referendum is a no to reform. They may take a hard line on Italian banks, which means bank bail-ins for bondholders in Italy comes back on the radar. Maybe the rating agencies decide to follow through and downgrade Italy. And Italy's been selling off relative to, not selling off, but it's been, the spread there with Spain's been widening out. So you've got this issue that Draghi will be very aware of, I think. When push comes to shove, they'll probably end up still doing Portugal. But at the moment, obviously, they don't think they're going to have to because it's not going to get downgraded.
Yes.